Christmas feels familiar, safe, certain. You see Santa Claus everywhere. The Christmas tree glowing in the corner of the room. Lights covering houses, streets, and stores. Gifts waiting patiently for December 25th. It feels ancient. Like it has always existed exactly this way. But what if I told you that some of the things you're most confident about Christmas are simply not true? Not exaggerations. Not misunderstandings. Real myths, repeated so often for so long that they quietly became facts in our minds. This isn't about taking the magic away. It's about understanding why the magic works, even when the story behind it isn't what we were told. And once you see that, Christmas starts to look very different. Let's start with something almost everyone assumes. For the first Christians, there was no Christmas. No December celebration. No birthday rituals. No focus on a birth at all. In fact, celebrating birthdays was considered a pagan habit, something serious believers avoided. Birthdays were associated with emperors and gods, not with a movement that was being persecuted and struggling to survive. Early Christianity wasn't centered on beginnings. It was centered on sacrifice, endurance, and resurrection. So Christmas, as we know it, didn't exist. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If Christmas wasn't original, how did it become the most celebrated holiday on earth? The answer begins long before nativity scenes and carols. Long before Santa Claus. Long before December 25th. Across Europe, people were already celebrating the winter solstice. Not the birth of Jesus, but the return of light. The moment when the days stopped getting shorter. The moment when darkness finally began to lose. These weren't quiet moments. They were massive seasonal rituals. Bonfires. Feasts. Evergreen plants brought indoors. Symbols of life surviving the harshest part of the year. Christianity didn't erase these celebrations. It absorbed them. The rituals stayed. The meaning changed. And once you realize that, one familiar symbol starts to feel different. The Christmas tree. Most people assume it's deeply biblical. It isn't. Evergreen trees were symbols of life long before they entered churches or living rooms. They stayed green when everything else died, so people brought them inside as a reminder that winter wouldn't win. There's no verse. No chapter. No scripture. Just nature and later, ornaments. And this is where things start to get interesting. Because Christmas didn't arrive fully formed. It evolved. And that evolution didn't stop with symbols. It reached people. Especially one figure. The most recognizable figure of Christmas today was never meant to be comforting. Long before red suits and warm laughter, the figure behind Santa Claus was unsettling. In parts of Central and Northern Europe, Santa didn't come alone, and he didn't always bring gifts. In alpine regions, Krampus roamed during the Christmas season, punishing misbehaving children, sometimes dragging them away in chains. In Germany, Knecht Ruprecht carried a staff and asked children if they prayed. Those who hadn't weren't rewarded, they were disciplined. In other regions, Belsnickel appeared in ragged clothing, frightening children into obedience. These figures weren't playful folklore. They were tools of discipline. The original Santa-like figure wasn't a holiday mascot. He was a moral enforcer. A reminder that behavior was being watched. And that consequences were real. But societies change. Childhood slowly stopped being something to control and became something to protect. Fear became inconvenient. The punishments disappeared. The darker stories faded. By the early 20th century, Santa had fully transformed. The enforcer became a grandfather. The threat became a promise. Fear quietly turned into nostalgia. Advertising finished the transformation. The red suit. The friendly smile. The idea that someone is always watching, but only to reward you. Santa didn't start as a symbol of generosity. He started as a mixture of saints, spirits, fear, and folklore, softened over centuries until only comfort remained. And once you see that, you start realizing something else. Christmas has never really been about joy. Historically, it was about survival. For most of human history, winter was dangerous. Food was scarce. Cold killed. Darkness felt endless. So Christmas traditions weren't designed to make people happy. They were designed to help people endure. That's why tables were overloaded with food. Not moderation, excess. You ate because tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. That's why people gathered obsessively. Not for nostalgia, for safety. Being alone in winter wasn't romantic. It was risky. And that's why lights mattered so much. Candles. Fires. Torches. Later, electric bulbs. They weren't decoration. They were defiance. A message that said, the darkness didn't win. So if Christmas sometimes feels emotional, heavy, even uncomfortable, that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. You're responding to what the season originally was. And then there are the gifts. We like to believe giving gifts at Christmas has always been about generosity and love. It hasn't. In ancient winter festivals, gifts weren't exchanged for joy. They were strategic. In Roman Saturnalia, gifts were symbolic: candles, coins, small objects. You gave to maintain balance, secure favor, and avoid conflict during a dangerous season. Even early Christian gift-giving reinforced social order. Who had? Who needed? Who owed whom? The idea that gifts should be magical, abundant, and emotionally loaded is very modern. So if gift-giving sometimes feels stressful, performative, or heavy, that tension isn't new. It's inherited. And then there's the sound of Christmas. The music. For centuries, Christmas was silent. Early Christian authorities distrusted music. They believed it encouraged excess and distracted from discipline. Carols didn't start in churches. They started in taverns, markets, public squares. Songs meant to be shared, not perfected. Only later were they adopted, rewritten, and given religious meaning. So Christmas music wasn't born sacred. It was born human. A way to feel less alone during the darkest time of the year. And maybe that's why it still works. Because beneath all the traditions, the purpose never really changed. Connection. Which brings us to the biggest myth of all. That Christmas is supposed to make you happy. Historically, it never was. It was about light surviving darkness. Community surviving winter. Hope existing despite fear, loss, and uncertainty. Somewhere along the way, Christmas became an emotional performance. A deadline for happiness. Smile. Celebrate. Be grateful. But the original message was never perfection. It was endurance. So if Christmas feels complicated, nostalgic, emotional, even heavy, you're not missing the point. You're closer to it than you think. Because Christmas was never meant to erase darkness. It was meant to remind us that light returns. Slowly. Imperfectly. But always. And that might be the most honest Christmas truth of all.